Welcome back to Wargaming World, to France 1944, and to another game of 1 hour Wargames. Right, so another game of 1 hour Wargames, this time in France. We have an advancing British column, going to move and attack to a German line, and the aim of this game is ultimately, after 15 turns, to occupy this town. Now, just before I go into detail about the game itself, just to say thanks for everybody who's joined the 1 hour Wargame fan group. It's really growing, and if you want to join, you'll see the link in the description, and if you want to join there and add your thoughts into the games, then that would be great. I'm going to play what is scenario 10 in the rulebook, which is late arrivals. And in this game we've got the advancing British force, which I'll talk about in a moment. They appear on the table in turn 1, and the German force start off with just 2 units, which will be the units that we've got marked there with the 2 dice, the 1 and 2, and then the remainder will arrive from the south end of the table, and they'll do so in turns 5 and 10. So let's have a quick look at the British forces. So there are 6 units, so they're marked out quite clearly. So 1 is the Sherman tank that's advancing. 2 is the half-track, which is also armoured. It's got machine guns, so it'll be used in terms of action. It has a unit on board whilst it's travelling, but they can dismount, but that will be a 3rd unit. The 4th is a similar unit, but the half-track itself isn't armoured, so it's not going to be active in the game. I'll just mention that both of the 2 infantry units both have a Piat anti-tank rocket, and then we also have a Daimler as 5, and then at the front there we've got a universal carrier, and again the infantry can dismount. They do so with their Bren team, and finally at the front we have our leader from the parachute regiment, who's appeared and is guiding this unit, or these units I should say, further forward. Okay, so the defending Germans, first 2 units that are there, we've got a pack gun and then we've got an infantry unit, but it's a heavy unit which has a machine gun with it, heavy machine gun I should say. Then got the units coming out on turn 5, so 3 and 4, so we've got a Panzer IV and a motorcycle section. And then finally, similar to the British units, we've got a half-track and an infantry unit there. Half-track is armed, so it can be active. Both of the infantry units, again, also have anti-tank capability with Panzerfaust or Panzerschrecks, and yeah, that is the German force. So just to add a couple of rules to the game. So firstly, with regards to the leaders, the junior leaders can act on the 2 infantry units, reducing its casualty numbers by 1, although those units can't fire or move in that turn. Secondly, there is a senior leader. Now the senior leader can do a similar thing, reduce it by 1, but when it activates one of those units, that unit can still operate in that turn. The rule is about armour. If when armour is being fired at and we roll the damage with a 1, it's always a miss, so it's always ineffective in terms of the damage. But if we roll a 6, it might be a critical hit, so we roll another dice, and then if we get a 6 again, then it's critical, and effectively it's going to knock out the units as they are hit. So we'll see if that happens during the game, and let's start the game and see how we go. In terms of deployment, the Germans set up within 24 inches of this south board edge, and so the first unit is here taking cover with the machine gun unit there, and the second is just further along, so the pack gun can get some cover there behind the stone wall, next to the church, so that is the setup for the game at the start. And with the Germans in this defensive position, we start the game with turn 1. And turn 1 sees the British entry onto the table, the Red Army, as it will be in the rulebook. So this unit, or these units I should say, are advancing towards the German forces and the town. I've set it up in terms of the game because the unit moves, the vehicles I should say, 12 inches at a time. I've moved them slightly further away, otherwise it's a disadvantage to the blue forces because they get there a little quickly. But at the end of turn 1, that is our position. Turn 2 just means that the British move another 12 inches further forward. They're not within 12 inches of Germans in terms of firing, and it's the first time where the anti-tank German pack gun will see the British as they advance. So really that's all that's happening in turn 2. Germans aren't going to move, so we'll move on to turn 3. Turn 3, and the British have advanced further along the road. However, they are also within, now the Bren carrier is within 12 inches of the anti-tank gun. So therefore the Germans are going to fire, and we'll see what the impact of that is. Remember, it's 1d6, and if we get a 1 it's an automatic miss. If it's a 6 it might be a critical hit. And it's a 6. Just to talk you through this, just if you're not familiar, is that you'll see that the anti-tank gun against tanks or other armour is a +2. So we get a unit is knocked out when it has 15 in terms of casualties. We've taken 6. 2 more would be 8, but we roll again in terms of a critical hit, because if it hits again with another 6, then we're going to say that this front vehicle is knocked out completely. So let's see where it's another hit. No, it's not. So I'm just going to stick to the 8, which is what's happened. So 8 means it's quite severe in the first place. So 8 is the damage to that front vehicle. Now, I'm not going to do anything about moving this unit too. So that means it is the end of turn 3. Over to the British for turn 4. First thing I'm going to do is get the Bren team out. So we've got the 3 infantry there taking cover in that area. There's still a driver left in the universal carrier, but it isn't armed, and I'll move that slightly out of the way. Right, so I've moved that out of the way. I'm going to say it's inactive for the rest of the game. So for the remainder of this game, we're going to focus on the unit that's out there up by the church. I've moved the scout car forward and the half track. I will have the infantry dismount out of this one, but I'm going to say it's another action, so it's going to need to do so in the next turn. And then I've got another couple of actions. Over here I've had the unit dismount, so it's going to get some cover from this half track as it advances, as it's armed as well. And then we've got the Sherman. I've moved over the hedge here and advanced into this area so it can get some cover as it goes forward towards the church. So over to the Germans. Now the pack gun's actually out of range of the scout car, and I'm not going to move it or move the other units, so we're over to turn 5. I'm going to start here. I'm going to have the Bren team fire at this gun there. It's in cover, so it's going to be half effect. 6, so it's a 3. A lot of movements. I've moved the scout car further forward. It's still out of range of the pack gun. Trying to get some protection here from this particular building. Further along, we've had the infantry dismount from the half track. Senior leader is with them. Second half track has advanced. That's the one with the machine guns on it. It's got its infantry behind it, although I've moved the half track 12 inches further forward, so the infantry now are a little bit behind, only going 6 inches. And then we've got the Sherman, so the Shermans move forward just behind this infantry. That's the end of the British on turn 5, over to the Germans, and there is also some reinforcements. So turn 5, we've got German reinforcements. We've got a Panzer IV and a motorcycle team coming across the town square. I'm not going to move the pack gun, it's not within 12 inches. As far as the infantry is concerned, over on this side I'm not going to move that either, so that's the end of turn 5, over to turn 6. Well, lots of movement for the British. Move the scout car now, so it's in range of the pack gun. It will also be in range of firing perhaps from the Germans there at the corner, but we'll stick to the British for a moment. Advance of the British infantry here. On the other side I've moved that half track to be in range again of the pack gun and be able to fire itself in the next turn. Obviously the infantry are moving forward as well. Over on the other side got the Sherman moved into position, again it's in range of the pack gun. And finally I've moved that Bren team up to the side of the church. Right, for the Germans on turn 6 I've moved the motorcycle team forward and the tank. I'm going to fire with a Panzer Schreck from this unit at the scout car, and I'm also going to fire with the pack gun, somewhat spoilt for choice, but it's going to shoot at the half track. So first of all the infantry anti-tank gun, the Panzer Schreck, firing at the scout car, and a 1 is an automatic miss. Got the pack gun firing at the half track. That's a 6, so it may be critical again. And it is. So as a consequence, it's going to be completely knocked out, and that half track is no more. So turn 7, and there's going to start with some firing from the British scout gun and the Sherman. I think Sherman's got 2 weapons it can fire, the machine gun and also its high explosive. So the tank, as long as it doesn't, well, it isn't going to move. So we'll start there and see how we go. Scout car first of all, and that's a 6. Now that takes it up to 9 for the pack gun, but the difference with the Sherman firing, I'll say that it's still in cover. Not the case really when the scout car's firing, but the Sherman firing from that angle, we've still got the hard cover there, so it's half effect. First of all, the high explosive to 3, and round it down to 1. Just 1, so I'm going to say that's no effect. So the Sherman really hasn't done a great deal of harm, but the pack gun is up to 10. Elsewhere, I've moved the infantry up further forward here, and also here. So that's the end of the British activity in turn 7. Over to the Germans. I'm going to start off here, firing the anti-tank rocket, Panzer Schreck, at the scout car. And a 1 again is another miss. With the main gun of the Panzer IV, I'm going to fire at the Sherman. And it's a 3. We add 2 to make it up to 5. As far as the machine gun on the tank, or the 2 machine guns, they're obscured to fire at any infantry. So I'm going to say that's the only thing we can do with that Panzer IV at the moment. So next, need to see what the motorcyclist team will do. They've moved over to the other side of this wall, so they can defend this area. They may well dismount in the next turn. They've still got the pack gun, so I'm going to fire at the tank. And that's a 2. With the anti-tank we also add 2, so that's 4, so that tank is now up to 9. So we're on to turn 8, and I think we really need to do something decisive from the British, and the first is to get rid of this pack gun. So let's start with firing from the scout car. The full effect to be effective, but it's only a 2. Pack gun's up to 12, so I'm going to fire again with the Sherman. And they're in cover, but that's a 6. So even though it goes down to 3, it means the pack gun is knocked out. Okay, and with this infantry unit, I've got the Piat gun, so I'm going to fire the Piat at that Panzer IV. See the impact. A 1, and a bit like the Panzerschreck, it's a miss. Okay, I've moved this infantry unit further forward, and I've moved the Bren team into the church. So it's moved in through the main door. Now, it's the German turn in turn 8. I'm going to have a third shot with the Germans here, but these are supposed to be one-off shots, I think. So they might have more ammunition, but I'm going to say a third and final shot with the anti-tank rocket at that scout car. And the third miss. So that's been pretty useless. Now with the Panzer IV, I'm going to fire at the scout car, and I'm also going to fire the machine gun at the infantry next to it. HE round plus 2 is 3. I got that wrong. If it's a 1, it's an automatic miss, so it's a miss. Fire, and that's 4. However, I am going to say that the unit is under quite a lot of cover behind the building and the vehicle, so I'm going to say that the effect is 2. Finally, in turn 8, I'm going to say that the motorcycle team has dismounted, and therefore it's a unit with a light machine gun. So, turn 9, and the British will really need to try and remove this unit here. It'll do so with the use of this infantry. Perhaps I should have moved it further forward in the previous turn rather than trying to knock out that tank. It'll be supported by the scout car. Here, this infantry unit will have to support also, and it's up to perhaps the Sherman to try and knock out that Panzer IV. Over here in the church, we've got the motorcyclist units being held back by the Bren team. They're in the church. I might remove the figures there and just put some infantry when it comes to the German turn, but it is pinned. Conscious that there are German reinforcements coming in the next turn. We'll see what happens in this area. I'll start with the scout car. I'll mention actually that I've chosen not to use high explosive against infantry. I did that with the pack gun there, and with this unit again, I'm just going to say that it would normally use machine guns, so I'll just say it's 1d6 firing at this unit, which is in cover, so it's halved. So that's 3, and this is where they get to. There's the second unit moving forward. Got that Bren team just into the front here of the church, and there are no windows, so although there is the German unit next to it, the Bren team can't fire at it, and vice versa. So it's just going to hold its position, perhaps just to pin this unit down temporarily. That leaves the Sherman, so the Sherman's going to fire at the Panzer IV. Remembering we add 2. Oh, but it's a 6. See if it might be a critical hit. And so, is it a 6? No, it's not. So that just means it's going to be 8 in terms of damage on the Panzer IV. Alright, so we have the infantry firing at the British in the open, so it's 1d6. It's a 6. That unit therefore goes up to an 8. Did mention that the German unit has a tripod machine gun. It's in the rules, it's unlike when we do it in the First World War, where there is heavy infantry as such. There are no moderations in this particular game, so that's why it's just 1d6, and yeah, that looks like it's going to be a close call in this section of the game. As before, the Panzer IV is going to fire at the scout car, and it's also its machine gun can fire at the infantry. It's close by. Scout car, and that's 3 plus 2 as it's high explosive. So that's 5 into the infantry. It's another 6, so that unit is now, it's at a critical point, it's now up to 14. And so I've got this infantry unit here, and I'm just going to keep it where it is. Ultimately, the British need to take the town, so if it's going to be one where they aren't moving, or the British aren't moving, then there's no damage, just holding that line. Okay, over to turn 10, British to go first, but we do have German reinforcements to follow. So we're going to start with the Sherman firing at the Panzer IV. And that's 4 plus 2. With that, it's at 14, so it's at a critical moment. And I'm going to shoot at it again with this unit. It has the Piat. The Piat will fire at the Panzer IV, and really it's anything other than a 1. But it is a 1, and it's a miss. Now with this unit, it also has a Piat, and I think I'm just going to fire with that at the Panzer IV, because ultimately this unit is going to be removed with very high casualties at the moment. Again, anything but a 1, and that's a hit, so the Panzer IV is knocked out. So over here we've had the Piat gun fire. The senior leader reduced the casualties down to 1, so it's on 13, but still very vulnerable. But we've got the scout car, which hasn't acted as yet, so I'm going to fire again at this unit. 6, so their casualties go up to 6. And turn 10 sees further German reinforcements, so we've got the Hanomag coming on. The unit is still on the half-track, so it hasn't dismounted yet, but that's arrived. This unit will fire at the British in the open. The unit will be removed if it's anything other than a 1. And it's removed. Actually, I've also remembered that the senior leader is with this unit, so over the 2 turns when it fired, it could have also reduced its casualties by 1. So at the moment I had it at 6, but I'll reduce it down to 4 for those 2 turns. Turn 11, and I've moved the Sherman forward, and I've also moved the Bren team out, so they're in a position that they can fire in the next turn. Germans can fire in this. It'll be half effect in terms of having some cover over on this side. This infantry unit really isn't doing a great deal, but it's hiding really behind that scout car, which is going to fire at the infantry, which it can continue to do so. There isn't anything to knock it out until we manage to get the anti-tank Panzerfaust off this half-track as it moves further forward. So this turn, I just need to roll for the scout team. Again, half effect. Round it down to 2, so that unit goes up to 6. I haven't brought or moved this unit further forward as yet, is that there's effectively 3 infantry units for the Germans as opposed to the British 2. The British have the advantage in terms of armour, but I do need to be slightly cautious. So at this stage we're over to the Germans. Right, so over here this unit has dismounted. I'm going to fire with the infantry at the Bren team. Half effect 1 is nothing at all, so that's 2. Over here the senior leader takes the impact by 1 down, so it goes from 6 to 5. It also has a junior leader with it, and because it's not going to fire or move, it's going to I'll have another element of morale improvement, or removing any shock, so it'll go from 5 to 4. So that's the end of turn 11. I think, unless there are some very high dice rolls, it's pretty obvious that this unit here is fairly, well, somewhat entrenched and hard to remove. We've only got 4 turns to go, so it's going to be this unit really. The British unit has to act and see if it can remove this unit from that defensive position. The advantage very much at the moment is with the Germans, but let's see how we go in the next turn. Now over here I'm going to say that the Bren team's going to fire, and then the Sherman also, the machine gun that's on the turret. So I'm going to give hard cover for the Germans too, so effectively it's half effect of both rolls. ignoring ones, so that's 1. And just one more, so effectively it's 2. Okay, I've moved the British further forward, and I'm going to fire the scout car again at the Germans. No effect. Over here, I'm going to have, as I have before, the senior leader is going to reduce the casualties down by 1, so it's down to 3, and then the unit is going to fire at the British in the open. That's 3. The anti-tank, I'm going to fire at the Sherman over here. That's a 5, plus 2 is going to be 7, and therefore the Sherman is knocked out. On the other side there, the German unit is going to fire at the Bren team. And so that's 2 more. Right, at this point I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it a German victory. I'm not going to continue with the game. I think the right thing to do would be withdrawing the British infantry, maybe with a cover with the scout car back to these vehicles, and withdraw, look for some reinforcements, and go again. I think in terms of the amount of turns that we have, it's not really going to be possible to fully clear out this area. This particular area here on the right hand side has been really hard to shift, and with the loss of the Sherman also and some unfortunate dice rolls, I think it's very much in the German favour. So I'm going to call it here. It's been a good game, and I think this is a German victory. Okay, so just leaves it for me to say thanks very much for watching the video. We've enjoyed it. For the YouTube channel, if you want to click on a like and subscribe if you haven't already, that would be great. And if you wanted to join the Facebook groups, I know there is one for Neil Thomas rules, more broadly than just 1 Hour Wargames. Put a link on for that, and in addition there is the one that we have for just 1 Hour Wargames. The 1 Hour Wargames fan group, that'd be great, as well as other Wargames Facebook groups, including Wargaming World. So, thanks very much for watching, and look forward to seeing you next time.